Hello everybody, my name is Ragat. Welcome back my channel Health Fitness 1047. Here is the episode new. Follow me.
Alright, hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating and, frankly, pretty wild day in recent American history, June 14, 2025. This was a day packed with monumental events, from a massive military parade in Washington, D.C. to widespread protests dubbed No Kings rallies across the entire country. We've got a lot to unpack here, so let's get into it, drawing on all the amazing information we have from the sources. The Trump military parade, a spectacle of power and controversy. First up, let's talk about the main event in Washington, D.C., President Donald Trump's military parade. Now, on the surface, this event was officially billed as a grand celebration of the U.S. Army's 250th anniversary. And hey, 250 years is a huge milestone for the Army, right? Planners even put in a ton of effort to make this narrative stick, designing processions that honored key periods in American military history, from the Revolutionary War all the way through to the Civil War, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the global war on terror. They even had historical U.S. Army personnel, reenactors and period-accurate equipment to really drive that point home. The true intent? More than just a birthday celebration. But, and this is a big, but according to our sources, the reality behind this spectacle was a bit more personal. Behind closed doors, some administration officials were apparently referring to it as Donald Trump's birthday parade. And honestly, it's not hard to see why. The event coincided not only with Flag Day but also with President Trump's 79th birthday. The sources explicitly state that this lavish display was just one part of the Trump administration's vast, billion-dollar government effort to make the leader feel good about himself, and fulfilled his longtime desire for a grand military parade. Talk about a birthday wish coming true. The parade itself. What we saw. So, what did this grand parade actually look like? Well, it was quite the show. Thousands of soldiers participated, alongside military bands, troops on horseback, and a whole range of vehicles, from imposing tanks like the Sherman tanks of World War II to howitzers. And get this, they even featured drones and robotic dogs, representing the future of the Army. An Army parachute team dropped in, and helicopters flew overhead. The parade route stretched along Constitution Avenue Northwest, between 15th and 23rd Streets, with President Trump watching from a viewing stage near the White House. The event kicked off at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time and was expected to last over an hour. Before the main parade, there was an Army fitness competition and awards ceremony, and a larger Army birthday festival at the National Mall featuring live military demonstrations. The whole thing wrapped up with a massive fireworks display and a concert. President Trump himself was a central figure, administering the Army oath of enlistment to a group of new and re-enlisting soldiers. He stood alongside his wife, First Lady Melania Trump, and was joined by numerous GOP lawmakers and administration officials, including Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and several prominent House Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Dan Crenshaw. UFC CEO Dana White was front and center, as UFC was a sponsor, and White is a longtime supporter of Trump. Even Lee Greenwood was there, singing "God Bless the USA." The price tag and public perception now. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the cost. This event was estimated to have cost tens of millions of dollars, with some reports putting it as high as $45 million. And this wasn't lost on the American public. An NBC News Decision Desk poll revealed that nearly two-thirds of U.S. adults, a whopping 64%, opposed the use of government funds for the parade. This opposition was strong among Democrats, 88%, and independents, 72%, though a majority of Republicans, 65%, did support it. Interestingly, support was even higher among self-identified MAGA movement supporters, 75%, compared to Republicans who identified more with the party itself, 56%. So, clearly, this was a divisive issue from a financial standpoint. The atmosphere and the lack of crowds from the perspective of Rolling Stone. The spectacle was described as hideously expensive and gave off a vibe that alternated between a military recruitment video and softcore Trump propaganda. The C-SPAN feed even interspersed videos of Trump giving speeches and displayed a banner saying, "Video courtesy of America 250, a nonprofit reportedly taken over by Trump allies." Corporate America certainly played its part, with special thanks given to sponsors like Lockheed Martin, Coinbase, UFC, Palantir, and Form Energy Drinks. The soundtrack was pure rock, featuring tracks like AC/DC's Thunderstruck and Metallica's Enter Sandman. The crowd turnout was, well, underwhelming, according to some reports. Rolling Stone noted that the parade was short on attendees. The crowd of supporters, service members, and curious locals only managed to just fill out their allotted side of the street over several blocks in front of the White House. With plenty of room to spare on the lawns surrounding the Washington Monument. Even the TV broadcast showed sparsely filled risers along the parade route. The National Park Service had issued permits for 250,000 people for the festival and parade, but the actual turnout was far less, leaving vast areas like the Lincoln Memorial to Washington Monument route as empty field and food truck line than crowd. One particularly vivid detail noted that the parade itself was eerily quiet, with tanks sounding like a grocery cart in need of grease. Trump's message, strength and warning in his remarks. President Trump thanked the military and boasted about its strength, delivering a stark warning to foreign adversaries. America's enemies have learned that if you threaten the American people, our soldiers are coming for you. He promised that their defeat will be certain, their demise will be final, and their downfall will be total and complete. He also praised the soldiers for never giving up, never surrendering, and fighting to win, win, win. Vice President Vance also highlighted the Army's birthday, Trump's birthday, and even his own wedding anniversary, saying they would never ask you to go to war unless we absolutely have to. Overall, while the parade was a massive display of military hardware and political pageantry, its reception and true purpose were clearly points of contention, underscored by the significant cost and the public's disapproval of that spending. The No Kings protests, a nationwide counter-narrative now, while D.C. was busy with tanks and flyovers. The rest of the country, and indeed pockets within D.C., were alive with a powerful counter-narrative, the No Kings protests. These demonstrations weren't just random gatherings. They were deliberately timed to coincide with the military parade and Trump's birthday, explicitly aiming to counter what organizers called a day for Trump to feed his own ego, and to make it clear that action everywhere else would be the story of America that day. The movement and its message. These protests were organized by a coalition of progressive organizations, including the 50,501 National Movement, Pro-Democracy, Labor, and Liberal activists, and groups like Indivisible. The core message was clear: No Kings. This chant symbolized a rejection of strongman politics and corruption, an opposition to Trump's policies. especially his administration's immigration policies and a broader fight against authoritarianism and fascism. Protesters carried signs proclaiming, "We the people were not meant to kneel," and chanted, "Hey hey, ho ho, this wannabe king has got to go." Many also felt they were taking our flag back, asserting that Republicans had tried to take over the American flag and kind of use it as a weapon against other people. This was about defending democracy, human rights, and the environment. A nationwide outpouring. The scale of these protests was immense. They took place throughout the country in nearly 2,000 cities across all 50 states. Organizers believed these protests could dwarf the parade in size. And reports indicate that millions of people reportedly participated. Key voices and faces of the movement, the No Kings rallies, attracted a diverse array of participants and prominent figures. From politics, we saw Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer in New York City, Representative Jamie Raskin in Philadelphia declaring, "We've got no kings here. We've got no queens here. We've got no emperors. You are not our king and we are not your subjects." Newark Mayor Ross Baraka and Rep. LaMonica McIver attended the Newark protest. Civil rights icon Martin Luther King III spoke passionately in Philadelphia, emphasizing that we the people still believe in democracy and a nation without kings, without tyrants, without rulers who place themselves above the law. Labor leader Dolores Huerta, co-founder of the United Farm Workers, advised demonstrators to remain nonviolent. Drawing on the success of the civil rights movement, organizers like Ezra Levin of Indivisible and Lawrence Ham of the People's Organization for Progress highlighted the historical significance and the unified stand against what they saw as attempts to move the country towards a dictatorship. Even celebrities joined in. Rage Against the Machine guitarist Tom Morello addressed a large crowd in downtown Los Angeles, encouraging protesters to keep making their voices heard and stating that Trump picked the wrong mother city by picking on La. Actors Mark Ruffalo and Susan Sarandon marched with roughly 25,000 protesters down Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. Calls for non-violence. While many protests were reported as peaceful, particularly in Seattle where tens of thousands marched without confrontation or property destruction. And Philadelphia saw a peak of 80,000 people with no arrests. Some locations experienced significant clashes. Los Angeles was a hotspot for confrontations. Police surrounded protesters, pushed crowds, and used force, including firing munitions, flashbang devices, and tear gas. This aggressive response, at times, occurred despite no clear provocation. Protesters, in turn, threw bottles, concrete, rocks, and commercial-grade fireworks. The situation escalated to an unlawful assembly declaration and an 8 p.m. curfew. Several protesters were injured, some seen bleeding, and one man reportedly suffered a broken leg from ammunition. Trump had warned that protesters at the military parade would be met with heavy force, a statement that the White House press secretary later tried to walk back, saying the president supports peaceful protests. The sources note that Trump even sent National Guard troops and Marines into Los Angeles, described as a show of force and a test run for future operations. Over 523 protest-related arrests were made in Los Angeles since June 7, with 19 on the parade day alone. In DeKalb County, Georgia, police deployed tear gas on protesters who chanted "No justice, no peace, no ICE or police," and attempted to march towards an interstate ramp, leading to 8 arrests. In San Francisco, a motorist struck at least 4 No Kings protesters in what was investigated as a possible intentional act. In Nashville, Tennessee, a counter-protester was arrested for brandishing a handgun at a No Kings rally. And in Washington, D.C. itself, despite organizers not officially planning a major protest, over 50 people were arrested by U.S. Capitol Police for unlawful demonstration and crossing police lines, with some facing additional charges of assault and resisting arrest. Amidst these confrontations, there was a strong emphasis from protest organizers and leaders like Dolores Huerta for nonviolence. The Refuse Fascism Coalition, active in D.C., explicitly stated their desire for demonstrations to remain nonviolent, believing that nonviolent but determined resistance could change what's possible. The tragic shadow of Minnesota. A somber note cast a shadow over the protests, particularly in Minnesota. 2 state lawmakers were shot, with Representative Melissa Hortman killed and Senator John Hoffman injured, in what Minnesota Governor Tim Walz described as a politically motivated assassination. The No Kings protest in northeast Minneapolis was subsequently canceled due to a shelter-in-place order. And Governor Walz urged people to avoid all political rallies until the suspect was apprehended. Disturbingly, the suspect in the shooting allegedly had "No Kings" posters in his car. This tragic event highlighted the tense and sometimes dangerous political climate in which these protests were unfolding. Analysis and broader commentary: a nation divided? So, what do we make of all this? Looking at the sources, we can clearly see a stark contrast and a profound division playing out across the United States on June 14, 2025. The Tale of Two Americas. On one side, you have the military parade in D.C., a carefully orchestrated display of national power, military might, and, implicitly, a celebration of the commander-in-chief. It was a projection of strength and unity, albeit one that was incredibly expensive and largely seen by a significant portion of the public as a self-serving spectacle for the president's birthday. Trump's rhetoric reinforced this image of an unyielding, victorious America that would crush its enemies. The sponsors, from defense contractors to crypto exchanges, painted a picture of corporate alignment with this vision. On the other side, you have the No Kings protests, a widespread, decentralized, and often deeply passionate movement. This was a cry for democracy, human rights, and an end to policies seen as authoritarian, corrupt, or harmful, particularly regarding immigration. The presence of figures like Martin Luther King III and Dolores Huerta, and the symbolism of the Handmaid's Tale costumes, underscored a deep-seated concern for fundamental American values and civil liberties. These protesters explicitly aimed to counteract the parade, to show resistance, and to take our flag back from those they felt had co-opted its meaning. The information war and perception management. It's clear that both sides were engaged in a battle for public perception. Trump wanted to project an image of overwhelming strength and popularity, with the parade serving as his stage. His administration even sent troops to L.A., not just to keep peace but as a show of force and a test run. Meanwhile, the protest organizers deliberately spread their events nationwide, aiming to make action everywhere else the on crowd sizes are also fascinating. While the parade was reportedly sparsely attended, the No Kings protests boasted impressive numbers in cities like Philadelphia, 80,000, Los Angeles, over 20,000, and San Diego, over 20,000, and New York City, 25,000. This contrast suggests that the narrative of a united, supportive nation presented by the parade might have been more a wish than a reality. The role of violence and law enforcement. The sources also highlight the concerning reality of violence and aggressive law enforcement tactics. Trump's initial threat of heavy force against protesters set a confrontational tone. The severe clashes in Los Angeles, with police using tear gas, flash bangs, and even injuring protesters, paint a picture of highly charged and potentially dangerous situations. The fact that these tactics were sometimes employed, despite no clear provocation, raises serious questions about the use of state power against dissent. Even the tragic shooting in Minnesota, with the alleged suspect having "No Kings" posters, adds a layer of disturbing political violence to the already volatile situation. This underscores the critical importance of calls for non-violence from civil rights leaders like Dolores Huerta, who warned that violence could be used to justify brutal police force. The future of democracy, ultimately, June 14, 2025, as depicted in these sources, wasn't just a day of parades and protests. It was a snapshot of a nation grappling with its identity, its leadership, and the very definition of its democratic values. The No Kings movement's insistence that this land belongs to the people, not to the monarchs, not to the autocrats, not to strong men, speaks to a fundamental struggle over who holds power and for what purpose. As Dolores Huerta wisely put it, this is a huge challenge and a test for our democracy. And now we have to see how many of us are going to get involved and what are we going to do to save our democracy. Because, at this point in time, if we do not save our democracy, nobody's going to save it for us. This day served as a stark reminder that the fight for a free and just society is ongoing, requiring active participation and vigilance from its citizens. What a day, folks! A true reflection of the complex and often contentious political landscape. It's a lot to process, and it leaves us with many questions about the direction the country is headed. So, that's our deep dive into the Trump military parade and the No Kings protests. What are your thoughts on all of this? Do you think the parade was a necessary display of military pride, or an over-the-top political event? What about the protests, were they effective? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more in-depth analysis, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next upload. Thanks for watching.